back to Masters. This is Some-Belgian-prepper, and today I want to talk about a survival spear and all the survival uses you can do with it. But before we do that, if you're interested in detective stories, I wrote the first part of an 11-part series called Bloody Crosses. The link will be down in the description, so if you're interested, take a look. It's in Dutch, by the way, so yeah, survival spear. To be honest, it's something that is very underestimated in this high technological world. The spear is actually what gave us as humans the advantage over everything, and it has so many survival uses. So yeah, you can drag an AR-15 with you all you want, but in my opinion, you should not underestimate the spear for its multi-purpose. Yeah, with an AR-15, you can shoot a lot of people at the same time, but with a spear, you can do so much other things, and that's what I'm going to talk about today in this video. So first of all, one would say, yeah, but with a spear, you cannot just walk around with it. Well, the thing is, this is actually, to be honest, not really a spear. This is an agricultural tool, which is something they use to make holes in the ground to put the seeds in. But I found this when I bought my house. I found this in the tool shed, and yeah, I repurposed, so it's very cheap to make. That's one of the benefits of a spear. You can make it as cheap as possible. You can make it yourself in the wild. You don't even need iron. You can just make a tip you can carve a tip like a spear and put it on some fire to harden it, and that would be the same thing. It would be like pretty spherical. But yeah, my point is want to make is, with this I cannot just walk around in Belgium. So yeah, I would be stopped immediately. It would be illegal. But if you just have one of these iron tips that you can detach, if you probably can see, here. It is stuck on with some small screws. So if you have a multi-tool, you can just take the iron bit off, put it in your bug-out bag, and use it as a walking stick. And yeah, as a walking stick, it has that way you have some options actually, because if you take this off, you cannot really defend yourself. But like I said, for legal reasons, you can do it this way. But if this is gone, or another thing you can do is you can make a contraption that you can shove a protective cap on top of it, and that way it would be a legal walking stick, actually a concealed weapon, but could be deployed very fast by taking the contraption off and use it for self-defense. But as a walking stick, let's imagine, because I'm not going to take the effort today because it's going to be a long video anyway, and if you take this off and use it just as a walking stick. That's one of the benefits. If you have a heavy bug-out bag, you have something to divide the weight of it, especially when you walk in areas like with a lot of hills, mountains. That weight could be, if you have to bend over to climb on something, that weight could be annoying. So to keep your balance and from getting your ankle sprayed or something worse, you can have something to divide your weight. So I would say watch my video about the walking stick, how important they could be. So a walking stick is one of the first things that you can do with a spear. And if you probably can see, I have here a little contraption with some rope. The thing is, if you can take it off first. If you can see, I made a little notch all around this part. I put a noose around it. I can tighten it up, and I put another noose beneath it. So what's the idea behind this? The idea is you can just, if you can see, I make another noose around it, and yeah, you can hang other things above it, but you can also put it around your spear or your walking stick in this case, put it behind you, and that way if you're going to walk, your hands can slide up and down. And what you can do with this is just, if you can see, this holds my hand now down. So if I go down with my hands will not go down. It will be withhold with this notch and this noose, and I can just push it down, and that way I don't have to slide, especially when it rains, your hand will slide down and that could be annoying to get some firm grip. You don't want to fall, it's just for stability. So with this rope, you can just have some stability for your hand, and if you want it higher or lower, you can just regulate the noose around it. So yeah, that's a way to use it as a walking stick. Let's go to the next point. So this is another thing you can do with it, and that's just like we see in the movies. You know the hobo with a knapsack, I think it's called in English, on their back, and they're just walking around. But the thing is, your knapsack don't have to be like this. You can just rest it on top of it, but you counter it with hold it like this. So that way, if you have a bug out, even if you have a bug out bag, you can just put some extra water bottles or some extra, or if you caught some prey or some small game, you can put them in a bag and carry it like that without contaminating the contents of your bug out bag. So you can just walk it around, and if you just need to take a rest or something, you can just take it down on direct like that, or just take it off in case for self-defense, which will probably be the next point. So self-defense, in my opinion, and actually it's throughout whole of human history, even into the 17th century, the spear was still a used weapon. Why? Because yeah, it's very simple to make and you can keep your distance. So in contrary to other weapons like a knife or an axe, with a spear you can keep a person far away. Not only by in first case, this is something that you would only do for hunting, but in case of a less desperate attempt, you can try to learn to throw a spear. It would not be the best thing because you throw away your weapon. So if you're going to have a spear, many people would say it's a little bit old-fashioned, but it's still effective. I do Iaido, and we also learned some Yodo, which is fighting with a stick. It's like also like a spear fighting, but the thing is, if it's very underestimated. If you are going to fight against someone with a spear, and many people would just think you're huh, and they can just get around it. No, a spear is a very mobile fighting weapon, and you can do some very precise attacks. And you can even help if you know a little bit of HEMA. You know you can keep some multiple enemies at bay with just a spear. And never forget, if you're going to fight with a spear, never go too far, because you always have to be able to track back and redirect the point of your spear. But I would advise, just look up some HEMA with spears, and you will learn how easy it is to do some self-defense. And also never forget to sharpen your point, like I did, and rub it in with some oil so it will not rust. Going to the next point. So hunting, yeah, we all know the image of the prehistoric man going around with a spear. But yeah, a spear is a good hunting weapon for if you have a flock of birds, you can hit something. If you have big game like a boar or something bigger and you have good aim, you can do it. Or if you work together with a team of spearmen, you can gather some big game, and somebody will be able to ambush it while other people drive the game towards the people who lay the ambush. So that's a good thing. But it's also good for fishing. If you have a creek where there is some fish in it and it's low, you can just try to look at it. Yeah, it will be more handier with a fork on top of it for fishing, but with a spear it could also wait. You see the fish, and you can do some spear fishing. But always be aware, if you're going to do this, be aware that the fish is in another place than you see it. So you have to estimate where the breaking of the light will draw the image of the fish into the water, and you can catch a fish. And also another thing is, it's also, I talked about self-defense, but it's also a good self-defense against big game like I would not dare to say bears because yeah, that's a little bit of a gamble. But something like if you encounter with an aggressive boar or moose, spears were used as especially good against cavalry. What they did is if they see something coming through, they can put the backside in the ground and aim the spear at the charging animal. So yeah, if a bear comes at you, put it in the ground and use the bear his weight to put himself on the spear. It's very risky. Never do this, by the way. It's a more less desperate attempt, but it's something that a few tales from North American Indians did. So it could have worked, but it's very risky. But with a boar, if a boar charges at you, try to I would say not with a board because a board is very low and you do not want to get on the ground. So with a board you can try to stick it from above for self-defense and hope that it will get away because boars are very dangerous creatures. I've encountered them a few times and yeah, it's really scary when they come at you. Alright, let's go to the next point. So another benefit of a spear is, especially when you take the iron tip off, is when you're wounded. We all probably have sprained our ankle. So in a survival situation, like if you're going a bug out and you sprain your ankle or you have a wound at your foot and you cannot walk just like that, it could be very handy to have something to support your feet so you can still manage to at least get to a water source. Because a lot of people who were wounded in the wild or during a hike or during a bug out, the problem is when they get wounded and they cannot get in time to a water source, they would have died of dehydration. So try to get you can use it to get at least to a water source. You can heal a little bit and yeah, perhaps get some help. So that's another important benefit of the spear. So, talking about wounded people, another benefit of a spear is you can make an improvised carrying for a wounded person. So, if one of your travelers is wounded and you do not have another person to carry that person, it's a technique from World War II where they take a tarp and they lay the wounded person on top of it. You take your spear, put it on the backside, and turn and roll it a little bit around. You make sure that you still have room for the wounded person, and you can just drag the person like this on top with the tarp, and it will make it more easier to drag the person with something sturdy instead of taking the corners of a tarp. Yeah, that's a small technique that they used in the armies. So I've made a video about navigation, and one of the techniques to find the north is by using the shadow technique. And with a spear like this, you can just take a spear, chuck it in the ground, and see where the end of the shadow goes, and you mark it. You wait about 50 minutes, the shadow will move with the sun. There will be, after 15 or 20 minutes, it will have moved enough. You mark that one, and the line between those two markings, like with the stones, those are the south north line. So that's a way to find the north within 50 minutes, very precise. So yeah, that's another benefit of dragging along a spear. If you do not have a compass or another way to find the north for navigating and traveling. So if you caught some game, perhaps a small game, even big game or a fish, you have a campfire, just take the meat, put it on top of the spear. Of course, try to make it a little bit clean, and hold it on top of next to the fire, and that way you can cook without the need of making something to cook the fish or the meat on top of it, and you can just regulate yourself how much you need. You can carve a little piece off, keep cooking it, and that way you can cook layer by layer instead of fully cooking it. That could be a little bit more heavier, especially when you're on the road and you need to move very fast when it's needed. So yeah, it's like for the hobo technique in fact. So that way there's another use for the spear. So if you want to enter a building for scavenging, or if you want to leave a building, you can use just a spear. Perhaps best take the backside instead of this and knock the window out, and use the spear to knock out the little pieces of glass on the other side. You can climb through the window, and if you're going through the window, you can use the spear to have a little bit of balance and jump out of the window, so you do not get caught on top of some glass by just jumping out of it. So yeah, breaking glass is ideal with a spear in the case of emergency. So I made this video also about, my video about walking stick. You can use it to make improvised shelter. So yeah, if you have two trees, you can bind these both sides on top of the tree and put a tarp on top of it, or you can make a tent pole, chuck it in the ground, and use this top to make with the tarp a shelter or a tent that way. So or you can just chuck it in the ground, put it a little bit elevated with some other branches, and that way you have a small shelter. You can just improvise with your tarp or your rain poncho. So yeah, that's another use for it. Another thing is, if you are in an area, perhaps a swamp, or perhaps you're like in Belgium, like they did, you can, if you have all these smaller creeks, especially on the countryside, almost every field is surrounded by canals, by small canals and creeks where the water can flow in and go back to the rivers. So yeah, what you can do is, especially when you have a heavy bug out bag, you do not want to take the risk to jump over it, break your ankle, or lose your balance and fall within the creek. So what you can do is, you can just like I don't know what the English name is called, but you can put it in the ground and use it as a lever to jump over a creek or a small body of water. So yeah, the longer the spear, the handier it will be. But I would advise to be very careful using this, but it will make it more safer than without. So this is something that I would not advise to always do, but I made a video on how to make a fire. And if you have wood but no tinder, what you can do is, in the case of emergency, you take something like a file and you try to get some wood of it, and that way you can gather some sawdust and use that with a ferro rod to start a fire. I would not advise to do this, but if you're going to do this, this is the better way, because then you at least have your whole spear with just the outer layer a little bit filed off. So in case of emergency, you can use it to start a fire if it's dry, but usually, yeah, your spear, you will keep it dry normally. I know this will sound a little bit stupid, but a spear is actually kind of inspirational. We all have that image of the warrior, the hunter-gatherer with a spear in hand. It's kind of inspirational, especially towards perhaps younger people. And yeah, it's a little bit of intimidation, but it can give somebody, if you encounter some aggressors, or you want to do a show of force, if you have a knife, many people will say, I can take that guy. But if you see somebody walking with a spear, you will automatically have a little bit, a part of you inside of you assume from, oh, I don't want to mess with that guy. So it could be a little bit inspirational, gives a little bit of how to say this, a little bit of force, so that people will not see you as an easy target. That's what I'm actually trying to say. So another benefit is, if you are like here on the countryside, you can gather some food by getting some food from the trees, like nuts, berries, apples. Those are the usually things that you can find around here, or some acorns or birch nuts. If you want to, you can just reach for it, poke perhaps a little bit, rummage a little bit inside of it. So yeah, perhaps even if you find the bird's nest with some eggs, you can poke it and take the bird nest out. But I would not advise to do that, because poor birds. Yeah, that's just a small thing to gather food. So, yeah, we all have probably had that one friend who tried to put some fire food into the fire. It's not a little bit to his taste and try to push it quickly away, burn his hand. But don't worry, if you got the Spear O2000, you can just roll or push that block into the fire, and no problems, no burning hands, especially when you have one of these iron tips. So that's another benefit. That is perhaps something that not a lot of people will think, but if you have, during a bug out, a hike or camping, if you have to take a shit, we all know, or perhaps the people who've done it, it could be very annoying, especially when you're wearing pants and you need to squat a little bit. Some people will improvise, they hold on to a tree, or yeah, but with Spear you have two options to take a shit. My favorite would be just chuck it in the ground, make a small pit, of course, that's a way of dispose with it without attracting flies near your camping or your sleeping or your shelter place. Chuck it in the ground, hold on to it, and at the place you can just take a shit without the risk of falling into it. But if you want to have more of a toiletry experience, what you can do is, like with the shelter, if you have two trees or you have something to put on top of it, put it on top of it. Uh, Perhaps secure the sides with some rope. If you really have diarrhea, that could be more pleasant way, and that way you can just use it to sit on it. That way, especially when it's secured on the sides, and take a shit with like on the toilet. But yeah, just a small idea, but it's could be very comfortable, more comfortable in a survival situation where it's already stressful and you will have the runs. So another tip that you can do with the Spear is for signaling. So you can, yeah, this is a little bit dark, but if you have something like emergency blankets or some colorful piece of cloth or shamak, you can bind it like this, and that way you can make bigger movements, higher movements, so you will be more visible to signaling for help, for rescue, or perhaps give signals to if your party split up on the other side of the river or something far away, you can agree with some signals that you can give from further away and be more visible. Or if you really want to be like a Roman legionnaire, you can just use it to carry it like a banner or something if you really into that stuff. But yeah, it's just a thing you can do. Yeah, if you have a person who has fallen into the water, especially with some heavy with some heavy, how do you say this, bug out bag or something, or they are stuck in the mud or quicksand, at least you have something to reach them. They can hold on to, and you can try to slowly pull them out, or at least keep them above the watery substances, like in the mud, that they don't sink down. Or yeah, that's another thing you can do. It could save someone's life or yourself if you fall yourself in the water. So if during a bug out or hike or whatever, if somebody did something very illegal or somebody tried to attack you, you cannot take the risk. You do not really have something to keeping. It would be even dangerous to keeping captured with something that you can bind their hands, because I made a video about how to escape from all types of restraints and handcuffs. So I would advise to watch that video. But the problem is, if you want to capture somebody and give him to the authorities, because you can form a risk. So like if there is some crazy person during a bug out or a hike that attacked you, yeah, you cannot you cannot let that person just go. But you can also not kill him because you are not a dick. So a thing you can do is something like they did in the Vietnam War, is use the spear and bind their hands on the types of the spear. So that way they cannot reach the other knots or whatever you use as restraint, and they have difficulty to try to how do you say this, resist, or they are easier to control that way. And yeah, that way they are more visible if they try to run away, and they cannot just run away because they will be bumping against every tree and every branch on the way. And yeah, it's perhaps a little bit dark, but sometimes you want to do the right thing, not kill the person. That even if they are even if they try to attack you. So yeah, I don't want to give anybody some bad ideas, but it's sometimes the reality that could happen in certain situations. So another benefit of it, if you have perhaps a wet tarp or a wet big piece of clothing, or perhaps something that you want to dry, you can just put it in the ground, put your jacket, tarp, wet tarp or something on top of it, and you can let it dry like that in the wind. If you have something smaller, you can attach it with the sides of the tree and put all the smaller pieces of clothing on top of it and let it dry like a dry rack. So yeah, dry clothes and tarps is something that is often underestimated during a survival or situation, or a camping or a hike trip. So you do not want things to get wet because they will be more heavier and they can cause some problems like trench foot, especially with socks. So yeah, that's something important to think about. So sometimes if you want to gather some water from a water source, it could be a little bit difficult. You cannot just take the canteen and just bend over in the water. Sometimes the water is a little bit deeper and it could be dangerous to get in because of the water in creeks and rivers can go up and down. The banks of the river will be muddy, wet, and yeah, it's kind of dangerous to, and you not always can wait for high tide. So what you can do is you bind a canteen, a bucket, perhaps I have here a small bucket, yeah, attach them so at least you do not lose it. That's perhaps why the cordage could be used for. Bind it, and that way you can just from a distance, like in a water pit, a water source is lower or a creek, lower it down, and gather the water and put it back up, and yeah, that way you can have the water without the risk of falling in. But if the person falls in, you can use it to drag them back out. But yeah, that's something small that could help you a lot with, especially with water. Water is very important. So I think a lot of people that watch this video has wondered what the hell is this thing. Yeah, this is actually from a tactical mirror from my guns. So yeah, what you can do with the spear is, especially during a scavenging or in a urban area, if you want, especially or a war situation, you want to watch around you, around the corners without exposing yourself. If you watch around the corner, you show your face, especially when it's at person's eye height. So you do not want to do that, especially if the other person have guns. What you can do is you go lower where they would least be visible and expected with a mirror and look around the corner before entering a building or moving around the corner to see if it's safe. So yeah, and the same thing goes actually for a booby trap. If you are in a war area and they're prone to be booby traps, especially in abandoned buildings where soldiers perhaps could have taken refuge or did some fighting, it could be dangerous for some booby traps. So as you want to see around the corner if there are no tripwire or some IEDs or some other booby traps, I would say look at my video on how to deal with booby traps as a prepper. I would advise it. Look around, and that way you can be safe. And especially if you want to test if something is a little bit loose or if there are some tripwires, but be very careful. It's more for to try to detect them instead of getting rid of them. So yeah, this with a spear you can do that. So another thing, if you have a spear and there is a flood, or you're in an area where there is a lot of soft ground or watery ground or quicksand that could be happening, yeah, you can use it to find some solid path. So if you walk, you do not want to step on soft ground and start to get sucked into it by mud, quicksand, or especially during a flood, there could be you cannot see, it's too dark to see the water beneath it, to see the floor beneath it, so perhaps there is a hole in the concrete or in the asphalt, and you can use it to test the path before you step on it. Yeah, like this, and yeah, that could save you a lot of time that you will fall, or to keep your balance, especially during a flood. 30 centimeters of water could swipe a person beneath it, so you have actually some more area to divert your mass on top of it, and then the water cannot swoop you beneath your legs, or you can use it to a little bit to fight against the water that is coming. So yeah, that's something very important during a flood. Yeah, this might sound a little bit complicated, but it's actually simple if you develop a system for it. What the Indians did, I mean North American natives, what they did is they could give directions to somebody to a place where they have never been before with carvings. So they had a carving system by carving at so many times of walking. They have carvings to say go left on the rock or right on the mountain or go straight through forest or some other orientation points, and that way somebody who has never been to a certain place will know, oh, I can see now, I must go there, I must go left through the left of the mountain, I need to go now around the creek. And with that carving system you have actually a map on your spear, and this could be perhaps handy like in a windtalker situation. What I mean by that is like the system that the Americans used during World War II, where the Jivaro Indians had a language that almost nobody talks, so they used it as a coding system that nobody knew what they were saying through the radio. The same thing could apply if you have a dugout location, or you have a place that you need to find back, and you do not want anybody knows, even if they capture you, you cannot have it on a map or on a cell phone. And if you have something like a carving stick, they cannot read it, but you can, and that way your secret is safe. So if you find some roots or something that you want to mash into some food, especially with this kind of spear, if you can see, you can have in the pot, and you start to stamp it and mash it, and that way you can perhaps cook it better and digest it better. So yeah, mashing up your food, not in a bad way, but in a good way, could be helpful during the survival situation. So yeah, also a benefit. So you caught some small game, or you have caught something more or bigger that you can just eat at the campfire. So what do? You can just put some of your you can hang it on your spear, or you can put it onto your spear, put it above a fire, and let the smoke let it dry and smoke, so you can take the meat will last longer, and you can take it on your dugout or your hike, or you can put some fish on top of it and smoke it and dry it that way. So yeah, I would not advise, because your spear will smell, but don't put it too low that the fire will not burn the spear, but don't put it too high that smoke will be too much dispersed to be having a smoking effect on your meat or your fish that you will try to dry. So if you have a spear, and like I said, you can just take this out with some screws, you can take it off, but you can also put another tool on it. So instead of carrying a shovel, you just need a shovel head, put it on top of your staff, and yeah, screw it in, and then you have a long shovel to make a shelter or dig a latrine, or perhaps a trench if you really need one. So yeah, that's, or to find water or some other food source or whatever. So yeah, if you have a shovel head, this could be actually a multi-tool. If you have any other tools that you can put onto a staff, let me know if you have ever done something like that with some other tools than a shovel and a spear, because I'm really interested in what other people would come up with, to be honest. So another thing is, if you are in a dark building, so imagine you are scavenging or whatever, or there's a blackout, or the lights falls out, or your flashlight is broken by some reason, and you need to find your way in the dark. Sometimes you cannot just walk around, feel it, tap with your foot, because you could fall, you could get some wounds by some pointy things that stick out like nails or some glass, and you do not want to get wounded. So what you can do is, in the dark, you can use it as a blind man, use a stick to find the corners, the wheels, or perhaps some windows or something that feels like a door, and you can, in the dark, try to find your way like this and feel around without the risk of getting wounded with your hands, or falling into a hole in the ground. Because some old buildings perhaps have their floor broken open, so you can feel, oh, here is no floor, I cannot walk here. So that could be handy in the dark, so like a blind samurai. I know this will sound a little bit cliche, but they actually did this during a war. So imagine if you are hiking during a bug out or whatever, and somebody is shooting at you. You do not know where the shot is coming from, but you know they aim for you, and it's actually a sniper, and you want to know which direction. So something very typical, we're doing a little facility site testing. You can take your hat, and from your cover, you have to do it a little bit better perhaps. From your cover, you can try to act like you're looking up, and you can, if the sniper is taking other shots, you can perhaps now hear it's from that way, or you can measure from the sounds that you see a flash and hear it. You can count what distance it is, or you can, if they shoot ahead, you can see from the bullet hole the direction the shot is coming from, and that way you can anticipate on how to sneak away, or perhaps return fire if you have a firearm, or that way at least you know where your best cover should be. So yeah, a little bit cliche, but it's a viable option that could save your life, especially during a war situation, or perhaps during a bug out scenario where some crazy person is just taking pot shots at people who come a little bit too near for his nerves. So yeah, that's something that could happen actually. So yeah, that is the end of the video. And if you have any other uses for a spear or survival spear like this, please let me know. I'm always eager to learn new things, and I probably missed some things, but these were all the things that I could think of to do with a spear and actually kind of test them out. But yeah, I would say like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Look in the link for my book if you're interested. And yeah, keep my last message is, keep things simple. There is a reason why some tools are still being used today, and yeah, even we can be as technological as we can be, but those things can break easily. But old technology could save your life when you have nothing else to replace. When you have nothing else that could be used like that. How do you say this? That could replace new technology that is made out of plastic or some more advanced materials. Something simple, sturdy, easy to make could still keep you alive in any survival situation that you can trust on. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.